ways are there to recruit and retain the best talent?
Number one was good work relationships. Number two is challenging jobs. Number three is autonomy to carry it out. Four is a chance to learn and develop. And five is pay.
Out of 40, you talk about the platinum rule and the golden rule. What is the difference between the two, and why is it important?
Well, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself. The platinum rule is, can I give the other person what they want, not shove down their throat what I want. In exchange, can you get what you want?
Welcome. My name is Daniel Grolet, and I'm the president of the Global Young Entrepreneur Society. The Global Young Entrepreneur Society is an international organization that supports exceptional young people in achieving entrepreneurial growth. My guest today is David Bradford, Senior Lecturer Emeritus in Leadership at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. He helped develop one of the school's most popular courses entitled Interpersonal Dynamics, but referred to by students as touchy-feely. David is the former director of Stanford's Executive Program in Leadership. He is the author of 6 books, including the management classic, Influence Without Authority, and his latest book, Connect, Building Exceptional Relationship with Family, Friends, and Colleagues. Connect has been praised by Arianna Huffington, Ray Dalio, and Reid Hoffman. David has consulted and conducted executive programs for countless organizations, including Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Cisco Systems, and Levi Strauss. David is on the editorial board of the Journal of Management Education, the Journal of Applied Behavioral Science, and the Academy of Management Learning and Education. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. David Bradford.
Good afternoon to you.
You have talked about the shift in way leaders behave from being all-knowing and heroic to giving employees more space to do things the way they think is best. What makes a good leader today?
I think we need to start with the assumption that the world is now becoming so complex that it's very difficult for the leader to have all the answers. When the world was simple, jobs were simple, the leader knew what to do and could just give orders. That may still be true to a small extent for an entrepreneur who's beginning, but the entrepreneur will soon learn that knowledge is required beyond what he or she knows. So I would define the job of the leader is not to personally try to find the answer by him or herself, but instead to realize that you've got competence in the people you hire. So your job is to release and focus the ability of those around you. So it isn't necessarily letting them do what they want to do, but it's finding ways that can tap into their knowledge, that can listen to them, that can urge them to take initiative within the vision that you have built and the direction you have set. There's a famous American ball player who said, "No one of us ain't as smart as all of us." And if leaders realize that tapping in on all that knowledge is a way to have excellence, we'd have much more successful organizations.
People think the best way to recruit and retain the best talent is to offer the best financial compensation. What other ways are there to recruit and retain the best talent?
It turns out that isn't the most powerful way. I was reading some research which, particularly for young people up to their 40s or 50s, which at my age seems young, to you it doesn't seem young. So they said, what is it that you most want from a job? And number one was good work relationships. If you've ever worked at a place, and I have, which is poisonous, backbiting, and so on, you realize how important that is. That's number one. Number two is to have challenging jobs. Number three is autonomy to carry it out. 4 is a chance to learn and develop. And 5 is pay. So the first 4 aren't as expensive as pay. And what's interesting is the second, third, and fourth, challenging jobs, autonomy to carry it out, and a chance to learn, develop, are ways in which the leader can engage the competence of those below.
Entrepreneurs do not have bosses in the traditional sense of the word, but they do have to cooperate with investors, business partners, and suppliers who they are not in charge of. Could you please walk us through the Cohen-Bradford influence without authority model?
Glad to. This is based on the norm of reciprocity. And the norm of reciprocity is if I do something for you, you're going to feel this internal need to return it, to return the compliment. So if you go out to lunch for a friend and they've paid for lunch the previous time, you're going to feel this need to pick up the check this time and to try to put it back into balance. This norm of reciprocity exists in all cultures. It exists in pre-literate tribes, in chimpanzees. Those chimps that give other chimps food when they have excess food are more likely to receive it when they need it. So it seems to be hardwired, not just in human beings, but in other animal species. So that's the basic notion. So the basic notion is you're going to have influence when you don't have formal authority. If you can figure out what other people need, give it to them, and in return, you're going to be in a position to get what you need. And it's really best if you could make that explicit. So let me give an example. You need to have a vendor provide a certain amount. You know that the vendor works best when they have a lot of lead time. So can you say, this is what I need. I'd be glad to give you a lot of lead time if I can get a reduced price in what you give. That's the sort of exchange that goes on. So the basic model says, can I know what the other person wants? Can I be clear in what I want? Can I set up a win-win exchange where each of us get what we want? So that's the basic model. And we would argue when we talk in organizations, we're not telling them something new necessarily. We're telling them what they do all the time. But if you could make it explicit, you can be much more influential.
How do you identify which currencies of exchange are important to a person?
This is what good salespeople know all the time. Before they go and make the sale, they want to know what the customer needs. So often people will broadcast it. So let me take the case of a boss and a direct report. The boss will usually broadcast it and say, we need to be more responsive to our customers. We need to increase quality. We need to cut costs. People broadcast it all the time. That's one way. Another way is if you know the other person even a little bit, do you know how they're rewarded? Is it true that they're under tight deadlines? And that's very important to them. So can you understand their world? And of course, the final way and the obvious way is, can you ask them? Can you say, Jacques, we are interdependent. I need some things from you, but I want to give you what you need. I think this is what you might need. Do I have it right? And the very fact of asking is a currency because it is showing them that you're interested in them and want a better relationship.
In your book, Influence Without Authority, you talk about how it is better to adhere to the platinum rule rather than the golden rule. What is the difference between the two, and why is it important?
Well, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself, which is not a bad starting place. But that assumes that what you want is what the other person wants. And a real mistake is to assume that's true in all cases. The platinum rule is do unto others as they want to be done unto. So what that's saying is, can I give the other person what they want, not shove down their throat what I want? Give them what they want. In exchange, can you get what you want?
Building a robust network is essential to entrepreneurial success. What advice do you have on building strong relationships with people you meet in a professional context?
Building on what we were talking about just before, Daniel, obviously, if I'm giving the other person something that they want and I'm getting what I want, that's going to start to build a relationship. They see me as useful. They see me as helpful. It builds trust. So that's a starting point. The course that you talked about, interpersonal dynamics or touchy-feely, and written up in our book, Connect, we've found that there are 6 dimensions to a strong relationship. And these apply to all relationships. One is, to what extent can I let myself be known? That is, tell you who I really am and not spit an image and not pretend to be something else. Second, can I build conditions where you can be yourself? And the third condition is, do we believe that in sharing this information, it won't be used against us? Now that starts to build trust. You start to see me as a human being. I start to understand you and value you. We, in a sense, don't use this against the other person. It builds trust. I'm more willing to share. You're more willing to share. And the cycle continues. The fourth dimension is, can we be honest with each other? And often we aren't. Now, this doesn't mean that you share everything, but you share what is relevant. And I have a colleague who said, there's nothing more efficient than honesty. You cut to the chase, you get down to what's important. And often we, in a sense, aren't as honest as we could be. Number 5 is, any relationship is going to have some bumps in the road, some disagreements, even some conflict. Can we raise this conflict? Can we resolve it? And can we resolve it in a way that actually builds the relationship, rather than destroys the relationship? And finally, good, strong, robust relationships are ones in which we're committed to each other's growth and development. So if I see you doing something that's hurting you, will I take the risk of saying, hey, Daniel, when you do that, I think it cuts down your effectiveness. That shows that I'm committed to you, to your development. And that's, again, a key part of a strong relationship.
I guess we can start behaving this way, but how do we make it mutual?
Well, I think starting yourself is where you need to start. And what you're doing is you're showing the other person that you're willing to be more yourself, more honest. That's probably going to make them comfortable and they're likely to respond. But let's assume that they don't, and you feel like it's a little out of balance, that you're sharing an awful lot and they, if you think of a poker analogy, are playing the cards close to their chest. That doesn't build trust. Could you say to the other person, Simone, I really want a good relationship. I find myself sharing a lot. I'm not hearing much about you, about what's important, and I'd like to know, am I doing anything that's tying you up? It's inhibiting you. If I'm going to continue being myself, I'm going to need more from you. So we talk about the issue, and it might be that Simone didn't realize what she was doing and is more willing to be open, or says, well, gee, David, when I have done that, this is what's gotten in the way. That's a form of conflict. Then we can clean that up and hopefully continue to build the relationship.
Could you please explain the concept of over the net to our audience?
Most feedback is over the net. That is, I'm moving from what I know, your observable behavior and the impact on me, and starting to make some inferences about what your intentions are, what motivates you, or what you are as a person.
So how can we create a culture in which members of the organization are more likely to build strong relationships with each other?
You are looking for examples that violated that you correct, but also, you mentioned I worked for Levi Strauss, is Bob Haas used to be aware of when people did things that really support the culture, he would write them a personal note.
In Connect, you talk about the concept of over the net. Could you please explain it to our audience?
Now, this is a little complicated, so hang in there with me, audience. What we are saying is that in any interaction, and we can take our interaction right now on Zoom, each person only has 2 of 3 realities. And we need all 3 realities if we're to work together, be effective, and build a relationship. So I want you to imagine a picture of 2 people interacting. Reality number 1 is person number 1's motives and needs. Why is that person wanting something? Reality number 2 is the behavior that expresses it. So if we take our relationship right now, it's no surprise, but I have to say that my motive is to try to be clear, to be helpful, Also, my motive is to talk about our new book, Connect, which is, we feel, really very important. That's my intention. That's my reality. Now that I say it, you know it. You might have guessed it ahead of time, but you didn't know it. The second reality is my behavior, my words, my tone, my gestures, nonverbals, and so on. The third reality is the impact of my behavior on you. I don't know that. So as you don't know my reality, I don't know your reality. And I need to know the impact of my behavior if I'm to be effective. So my intention is to be clear. I'm perfectly clear to me. I don't know if I'm clear to you. Now you're nodding at the right time, but maybe you've just been raised to be a polite person and none of this is clear, but you don't want to be insulting. Well, that's not helpful to me if I don't know that. So can we build conditions where you can share that reality? It's called feedback. Now, the trouble is most feedback is done inaccurately and in a way that causes defensiveness. So I want you to imagine a tennis net between the first reality and the second reality. And as in tennis, you can't play in the other person's back court, we also say, stay on your side of the net. But yet most feedback is over the net. That is, I'm moving from what I know, your observable behavior and the impact on me, and starting to make some inferences about what your intentions are, what motivates you, or what you are as a person. So when we say to somebody, well, you just want to dominate, I don't know that. That's over the net. And that's what creates pain, dysfunctional relationships, and high defensiveness. Or we say, you don't want to be a team player, or you don't want to do your job well, or you just want to show off. All of those are over the net. Now, let me use the example if I'm starting to make up a story, and it is a story that I'm making up, that you don't want to be a team player. If I stick with my reality, the behavior and the impact on me, I can raise that in a way that you can hear. So if I say, and I'm of course making this up, if I say, Daniel, when you come late to meetings, I'm starting to draw the conclusion you don't want to be a team player. You can't say, no, you don't. You'd be over my net. So I'm sticking with the observable behavior, you're late for meetings, and the impact on me. This is a conclusion I'm starting to draw. I probably also want to add my feelings, and I'm getting annoyed by this. And it's also good for me to share my intention. And I really would like to have a better work relationship. That's why I'm raising it. So in doing that, sticking to the behavior, staying on my side of the net, we say you can say almost anything to almost anybody if you stick with your reality and stay on your side of the net.
Earlier in our discussion, you talked about how much employees value good relationships with coworkers. So how can we create a culture in which members of the organization are more likely to build strong relationships with each other?
If you are the entrepreneur and you've got 5 or 6 people starting to work for you, or 15 people growing to 30 people, I would want to make this explicit. I'd want to say, I want to build a good work relationship with everybody here and have everybody work well together. I think I'd also want to say, if people are doing things that are getting in the way, can we raise it to resolve it, not to attack the other person? And I think I'd also want to say, if I'm doing anything that's inhibiting people, that's causing problems, that's annoying to them, I want to hear it. Now, the crucial thing is, do you really want to hear it? And how do you respond when somebody raises it? So if and again, I'm making this up, if I'm working for you, Daniel, and I say, gee, Daniel, the last meeting, you sort of put me down a couple of times. What's your response? If you say, well, you deserved it, that's not going to build that culture of openness. If you explain yourself, that's going to be seen as defensiveness. But if you say, wow, sorry, I don't want to do it. What did I do? What's the behavior? And then if you can talk about it, and it might be that that behavior came out of something that it was bothering the boss, was bothering you. Can you say, I don't want to put you down, but I found myself, David, a little bothered because you kept on talking. Couldn't you be more succinct? Now, notice we're starting to get back into an exchange, as in the book Influence on Authority. You're saying what you need from me, and I'm saying what I need from you. So back to the point of how can an entrepreneur build that sort of culture? Obviously doing it. Asking for feedback that's getting in the way would be a key way to do it. Also, if there's somebody who is putting other people down, can you take them aside and say, Joseph, this is not what we want in this organization. Let me coach you on ways you can raise what is bothering you in a way that's not a put down. So this is, again, part of the leader's job is not to find the answer, but to build a system. And what you're doing is building a culture of people taking care of each other, people being more direct with each other, people being more direct with you. We see this as a key job of the leader.
Would you have different advice for larger organizations where there are simply so many people that the leader cannot interact with everyone?
The leaders set the culture. You, in essence, want to make sure that you are exemplifying the culture you want. Your executive team is exemplifying that culture. And you're also aware of times in which it's being violated. Let me tell a story from the United States. Discount called the Men's Warehouse. And the CEO wanted a culture in which salespeople on the floor didn't steal customers from other salespeople. That's part of the culture he wanted. I think the store was headquartered out here in San Francisco. He heard the story that a salesman, a key salesman who had high sales up in Seattle, was stealing customers from his peers. He warned them. The person continued to do it. And even though he was a top salesperson, he fired him because he said, more important than sales is the culture. So in essence, you are looking for examples that violated that you correct. But also, you mentioned I worked for Levi Strauss. What Bob Haas used to do is Bob Haas used to be aware of when people did things that really support the culture, he would write them a personal note. Now you can say a CEO spent his time writing a little personal note, but that act went around the organization, and it so typified what Bob Haas wanted. It started to build a more open, caring culture.
Which of the books that had a major impact on you would you recommend to young entrepreneurs?
I think for a person starting off, The Leadership Challenge by Barry Posner and Kouzes, is a great place to start. But leadership is very complex, and too many leadership books are back into what we started with, talking about heroic, which puts all the emphasis on the leader doing it alone. So I would like to suggest a book that we wrote that sold very well called Power Up by Bradford and Cohen. And we talk about how you build that sort of culture, how you build a strong team, how you build a vision, and how you handle disagreements and conflict. I think the two books you mentioned that we wrote could be useful. I think The Influence Without Authority by Cohen and Bradford, third edition. People came out, I think, 12, 15 years ago, and it's still selling very well. People are finding it very helpful. And if you want to build relationships, our new book, Connect, is one. I think those four books will get you a long way in being an effective leader.
We have come to the end of today's discussion, which I found very meaningful. On behalf of the Global Young Entrepreneur Society, Dr. David Bradford, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
I really enjoyed it, and good luck in the project you're doing. It's impressive.